Hello, I'm Carrie Gard, and welcome back to Tea Time with Tech Marketing Leaders. We are so close to the end of the year, folks. Only a few more episodes left until 2025. Thanksgiving next week. I'm pretty excited. It's my favorite holiday. I acknowledge that Christmas is a thing, and I appreciate the decorations and the warm and fuzzies it creates. I prefer Thanksgiving because it's all the gloriousness of Christmas without all the presents. So I am psyched for next week. I hope you all are too, which means we will not have an episode because we are always on Thursdays, and Thanksgiving, the best holiday ever, is on the Thursday. So we will have to wait until the following week. I'm so sorry, but it'll be a wonderful episode. I'm so excited for our final lineup here. I had a few people who I was able to slot in last minute, so we got some surprises coming. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. Today, I'm very excited for our conversation because I have Taryn Talley with me, and we're going to unpack events and how it has changed since the wonderful world of COVID, and they are back, and what we should be doing about it, and how we can really build our brands on the backs of it in multiple ways. She's going to tell us all the things. It's going to be great. Before I get there, a little bit about Taryn. She is a data-driven marketer with 20 plus years of experience, a marketer who can think strategically while delivering tactically with a clear bias towards action, mastering in marketing disciplines of web marketing, email marketing, brand marketing, content marketing, social media marketing, and event experiential marketing. She's thrived on both the agency and brand side in a variety of industries, pharma, banking, and tech, in both B2C and the B2B space. While she's comfortable as a solo contributor, she's a people manager with 15 plus years of experience in managing diverse teams of up to 20 people. We are going to unpack her story in a minute because, man, is it going to be glorious. And if you are looking for help, she might be somebody you should be looking at. And we're going to dig into all of those things. Taryn, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
So excited to have you. You've been busy.
I have been busy. There's a lot of stuff going on. So yeah.
Are you going to be able to calm down now in the next?
Yeah, I think I'm just going to take the next couple of weeks off. I think my next kind of meeting or event is going to be right after the holiday. So it'll be that first Monday. So I've got to meet with a CMO and just have a little coffee talk.
Exciting.
In about a week and a half off.
So good. Enjoy every minute of it. Every minute. Before we dive into our conversation, which, as I've mentioned, is going to be around events, and perfect timing for it because a bunch of us are going to the Cybersecurity Marketing Con event, December 8th. Let me know if you're there. I do want to know your story, though. You've had such a wonderful career. Tell us about it. Where are you today, and how did you get there?
Yeah. So I've got probably, I don't know if it's the traditional kind of marketer in falling into marketing role, but I started off as a creative. So my first, so my education is in design, and I started out as that designer, senior designer, moved to creative director, and then managing art director. So that was the first 10 years, 12 years of my experience. And, I worked in pharma and banking and some petrochem and kind of like a membership-based org, if you all know AAA. So the American Automobile Association. So I led the creative agency team there. And then probably during my pharma stint in design, I actually had an opportunity to do some brand marketing work and a little bit of project management. And that kind of got so the marketing bug bit me. So it was one of the best jobs I've had. It was very fun. Working with drugs, right? So it's not like it's glamorous or CPG. But it just, the way you think through and build strategy and then execute that strategy and then measure the results, right? It just kind of hooked me. So starting out with at least 10, it was about, probably like I said, 10 or 12. And then the rest of it was all marketing. So once I transitioned over to marketing, I rolled into brands like JP Morgan Chase and Roku and Ipsy. And then the last couple of opportunities I've had have been at agencies. So, one with Publicis, and with Epsilon and Publicis, and then Position Square, where I am right now.
Nice. Well, welcome to the dark side.
I've got a lot of friends on the agency side, so the dark welcomes me.
Oh, I think the agency side's come a long way. I actually worked for Publicis. I'm not going to date myself. A long time ago, pre-MKG, in New York, and so it was a wonderful experience. But it was tough. It was tough. But I know that the brand side's tough too. It's marketing is a tough world that we live in, and but we love it.
Yeah, I mean, if you all follow me on LinkedIn, you'll see me post from the Marketing Millennials, and there's always some kind of funny little marketing thing. Like the Halloween costume for a marketer is literally 7 hats. You just wear them. So very true.
Very fair, very, very true. So you're at an agency now. You've been doing all of this wonderful outwardly facing work at all these speaking engagements and all that fun jazz. What's the challenge you're currently facing? What's hard for you right now?
I mean, I think when you're looking at it like from a growth marketing firm perspective, right? It just feels, and from what I'm seeing, even at my events, right, and hearing people talk and having conversations, it's a struggle to sell, right? Right now, it's got this weird, I mean, on one hand, we have like the federal government reporting just great economic numbers, right? Like leading the world. But on the other side, we're seeing people just struggle trying to convert, right? Trying to take that lead and get them to buy. And
Mhm.
there's people are doing all different sorts of things, right? Using different AI tools, but in trying to optimize the buyer journey, right? And understand intent and pick up those signals and then break it down and build strategy around that,
Yeah.
trying to get those people to just not only be aware of you, but hear the pitch, understand the need, understand what they need, and then connect the dots. So like on the agency side, it's difficult, but I even think
Mhm.
B2B, like B2B SaaS, right? There's just
Mhm.
challenges everywhere. I haven't talked to anybody who's just like, hey, I'm just killing it. Everything's like the money's just rolling in, right? Customers are rolling in. It's always a lot of challenge. So I think that overall, right, is, and of course, in the agency side, you always have churn, right? Like you've got to, if you're not converting, like you've got to manage your churn.
Mhm.
So those are two very active agency challenges.
Yeah, I think the other challenge with being on the agency side is you can't always see the full funnel. So I've stepped into more of and you know this having worked with brands, I've had such a pleasure the last few years of actually being a fractional marketing leader. And so to get sort of like behind the scenes where I can dig into the data of a CRM has been life changing. But generally, when you work with big B2B SaaS companies who have all that internally, you don't get you're lucky if you can beg, borrow, and steal for a CSV
Yeah,
that you can pivot and parse. But even then, the data is very old, right? It's usually like we're looking at a month old data. Um, it's you're not always the trying to try you don't have the full picture, so to be able to map it accordingly
yeah.
is like I really hope find replace and pivot tables and VLOOKUPs are all of your friends because yeah, it's where you gotta live. But yeah, it the funnel period is a challenge of figuring out what those intent signals are, and then you add the agency layer onto that of not even being able to really see the whole picture. And yeah, oh man, struggle is real. The clients definitely aren't rolling the way that we all need them to.
I mean, I was one of those rare creatives that like every time I did some design work, right, the first thing I'd like pick, email the marketer and be like, how did it perform? Right. It's all about the data and having some kind of understanding or access to it. Right. So like, hey, did this work? Did this not work? Is there something else we can, ideate on? So yeah, I'm right there with you on that.
Ah, I love I think that's really the beautiful thing about when you can marry the creative side and the data side to be able to, it's like one thing you can control, right? So thinking about what you can control and being able to know that that's your impact that you can make and how to get better. So
Yeah,
yes to data and yes, creatives, you can use data to better your designs.
absolutely.
Agreed. Agreed. Although I love telling this story real quick.
Hmm.
Uh, long time ago, not recently, but long time ago, everybody thought Disney was like the site to mimic because their metrics were so good in terms of time on site and engagement rates and so on and so forth. But it was actually the rates were so good because people couldn't find anything, but they were so determined to find it.
I mean,
Because
is
it's busy.
you live out to leadership? The site was too confusing. People were on there for like an hour.
Yeah, so there's that too. It's all about how you gotta read the data from all sides, not just the data you want to read too. Oh, could talk about data all day. Well, we
True.
want to talk about today what we've promised our listeners, and because we got some events coming up, it's very exciting. How do events currently fit into your realm? When you and I talked previously, and we set this conversation up over a month ago, which clearly lots changed on your side, which is amazing. But events were a big part of really how you were working with brands and helping them find those customers and create that engagement. So talk to me a little bit about your event background and how you're thinking about events today.
Yeah, sure. So this is going to be an eye opener for some people, but so when I hired in, it was right after the pandemic. So it was early 2022. And part of the job description, right, was event marketing or experiential. And then there was also like some social connections, like social media, content marketing, thought leadership. So I actually have multiple disciplines. So I have to pivot constantly. It's like I call it the lazy Susan of marketing. I just spin the wheel. And so coming in and doing, so I had no practical event marketing experience. Like I've done and worked on teams that had put together during the pandemic some Instagram lives, right? So part of the job when you're meeting somebody and you're looking for that next opportunity, you're talking, you have to sell yourself and your capabilities. So for me, I have a lot of personal experience and a lot of history of doing things, of going to events, of knowing what works and what doesn't work, of actually working on the back end. So when I was in college, like working my way through college, I actually worked in food service. So I was part of events from the operational kind of like component of like, I don't know, hospitality, right?
Mm-hmm.
So understanding that, so like I was able to talk through and pivot that and be like, well, this is what I've done, this is what I've understood, and sold that into it and just was like, yeah, I can do this. And then 3 months later, my first event happened. So it was like, so the event,
Wow, that's quick.
yeah. So like, I mean, listen, we're marketers, right? At the core, this is what we have to do. Like all of my super big career successes happen in things that I didn't know or do before I did them. So being a lifelong learner, I crank down, I study, I understand, I break it down, and then I start planning. I start working on the strategy, working on the tactics, and get it done. So for us, they wanted more events. So post-COVID, the company had, like at least the CEO, had a walking group. And it was other people in the Bay Area. And every Thursday during the pandemic, they would get together and they do a little walk in the evening and then have like an event for 2 or 3 hours. So they wanted to get back into those events, right? Those networking events, those opportunities, right? To just connect with folks, right? And talk about what they're doing and what you're doing and, learning more about their business and how you might help. And so that's the first event. And we have done about 6 of the major networking groups, networking events in partnership with the Go-to-Market Leaders Society. So we've partnered with them and other like smaller firms to pool our resources and throw these huge events in Hillsborough. And it's a no-sell event. It's just connecting senior leaders, having those conversations, right? And just building this community. And it's been working really, really well for us. And I think in the 3 years I've been here, I've thrown almost 30 events of all different stripes and shades.
That's so fun. I love that we're defining events in a way that's really malleable. I mean, I've heard this over, I've been doing my podcast now for since 2019, so I've heard it this way before, but I just want to double down on it in the sense of like it doesn't have to be this big Salesforce, Dreamforce kind of mentality. It can be these moments that you create in a specific place at a very small scale that's just ultimately all about connection. And I just want to make sure we're sitting with that for a second because I feel like when we say events, it feels very big. and very scary. And it sounds like it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, I mean, so some of the events that I've thrown just in the last couple of years have been, so I've got about a total of the 8 large scale, 100 plus people networking events. 2 of them I did on my own, the winery in the area, and just had like a catered and just a great experience. And I think it was like one of those events fell on a huge San Francisco 49er game with my team. So we actually got a television in there. Like,
Oh, wow.
over here.
Way to pivot.
No, so we like did the whole thing, right? So we had the game over there, there were couches and chairs, and then the event was over here. So people could mingle and kind of like do what they wanted to do. So I've done about 8 of those. I've done, God, I think maybe a dozen walking group dinners at the CEO's house. One of my best one that people really loved, this was a FOMO generator, but we prepared an Argentinian grill. So we had an Argentinian grill, hardwood charcoal, like we had it right on site. All the food was out. And then I went and met with a distillery that was based in the Bay Area. And they used it's a high-tech distillery where they can make 1 billion flavors of like any kind of bourbon or whiskey. They can influence it. And they use these staves to like flavor the whiskey. So they can do like a production in days, what would take weeks or months. So they very fast. So we had them into the office and we did a tasting. So I asked them for all their tasting cards and I studied everything. So once again, as a marketer, we have to learn, we have to study, we have to prepare. And what I did was I pulled about 10 of these guys, CMOs, CEOs, around the fire pit. And I led them through a tasting of the bourbon and the whiskey. I had a bartender there who's making specialty cocktails based on those drinks. And my CEO was like, you have taken this to like a level that we have not seen. Like I guess, if somebody's throwing a bomb, that was a nuke. So it's just like, why didn't you invite me to this? So it was just FOMO generating. But we had recently done a couple of months ago a tequila tasting and street tacos.
Perfect combo.
But it's about, like you said, creating the experience, right? Creating that memorable experience. Some people are still talking about that, like Argentinian food and bourbon tasting, right? It's an epic event. I also work on growth marketing summits, so it's like planning right now the 3rd one for an early next year in Park City. But we pull together senior leaders, we do a couple of days of presentations, and it's only 4 hours a day. So people can do their work, ski, do whatever they want to do, and then we get together, we got like 3 or 4 hours of sessions a day, and then I bring in a private chef. So it's just this huge chalet in Park City. So like that's the kind of bespoke experience. And I mean,
that's so cool.
Picking them up from the airport, I'm creating something that's so memorable, right? That when something comes up again, like people are clamoring to get to it, right? Like they want to be part of this. And then in those events, we meet people, we talk to them, we find out, like as a marketer, when I go to events, I talk to people about what their challenges are. Not that I'm selling them anything, right? Because I'm just like, listen, I'm just a simple marketer. But I talk to people about what their challenges are, and then I use that in content marketing. So I write thought leadership to those challenges.
Yep.
Like that's how I fuel the kind of like, like I guess on all ends of marketing, right? I kind of base it on there. But that's where I'm at. And it's been a really 3 years, right? Of just
3 years. Done a lot in 3 years.
Yeah. And that's only one discipline. But it's like, but that's the thing, right? I actually, my one humble brag was my best showing on Google in the search return was number 3 for Growth Marketing Summit. So after this past years, we were doing trailers. We had links to the site so people could see who attended. We did like little snippets of video, so like video storytelling and social. And I think it was about a month or 2 after I started working on that and just developing those campaigns. And I went into Google and typed up Growth Marketing Summit, and it was like number 3. And I was like,
there it is.
Wow, like
that's what it's about. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I have so many questions. I don't know where to start. Audience, if you have questions, please chime in. Hello, Toki. Nice to see you. Sell, spin, repeat. Yes to that. I think my first question is, what do you see? I mean, you gave us a plethora of different types of events, from a very simple walking event to a very complex skiing event. What what are some of the price points of these things in terms of what people can expect to spend?
Well, I mean, I think on a GTM event, we were throwing the GTM networking event, and it was a paella party. So we have like 2 5-foot paella pans. Caterer comes in, does it
So
all.
yummy.
Yeah, these things are like pretty epic. But like, working with AJ Gandhi from the Go-to-Market Leader Society and just making it a frictionless event and working on that with the partners that have contributed to that, we are seeing these events for about, I'd say for 100 people up to 150, somewhere between 8 and 10,000 total,
Okay, that's
including,
not bad.
right? And then I think on something like the CEO's walking group, I can like, even with the liquor and the tequila and the bourbon and everything, like getting all of that together in the food, we're looking at about 1,200, right? And it's a small event. The
Yeah.
marketing summit, we rent this huge chalet, right? So the cost for that is about somewhere between 60 and 80,000 because it depends
Okay.
perhaps other vendors. Like
Sure.
I brought in this year, so you're gonna laugh. And some people roll their eyes, but I'm creating this experience that I want people just to be immersed in. So we pick them up at the airport. So I had cars scheduled for everyone's flight arrivals and transport back. I had 2 masseuses, 2 massage therapists come on
Nice.
site. So right before the session for 2 hours, if you were done skiing, you can go grab a chair massage, right? And then of course the private chefs. We had 2 trips, like snowmobiling in the valley, and then we did a snowshoe hike. So like just
Oh,
fun activities, right?
yes.
But creating these super memorable events. And my favorite word is spoke, but that's what we're trying to do, right? It's like
Yeah, I just love how it doesn't, again, just coming back to the like how doable this is. So let's talk about how, so you have a plan, you have the event, you have a budget. How do you get people to the event? What are sort of your marketing tactics there of getting the word out? Is it by invite only? Is it more of a spray and then let people sort of hand raise and opt in? What's sort of your approach?
it's a mix of things, right? Because I mean, you can set up this amazing event, right? But it's really who you're bringing in there. So we first start off with requirements, like who are we looking to bring in, right? So when, not to sound elitist, but we're looking for people that influence the buying decision.
Sure.
And that can be a director, senior managers even participate on buying teams. But we look for those directors and above in marketing and retail and operations and customer experience and get those senior leaders to come. So that's the first requirement, right? And then it's a partnership so we have multiple companies plus ours looking and sponsoring this, then we all invite people within our network. We also have a community from that Thursday night group that we tap into to bring in, right? So we have some of the same people coming in and offering that value or just enhancing the event. But then we also recruit personally from our client list, so people that are in the area or wherever we are with this. So bringing in clients, the leadership team here also invites people. So it's like we probably start with the invites because the event schedule is the schedule. So we
Right.
start about somewhere, optimally for us, it's about 2.5 months before the event. We like to get things done. There's been sometimes we've been a little behind. It's like a week, like a month
I mean, yeah.
and just getting people there. So we know how many people we're looking for. We're looking for a certain like type of role, certain type of seniority, and then we work those multiple angles. And then sometimes so since I'm a premium LinkedIn person, I do my DMs to people in second levels. So that's how I've also been able to increase the community by 20%. So I do these messages and like, listen, this is no sales event, but I'd love to have you here. I read your paper, read your article on this, and I love your perspective on this. I think you would be a lot of value here. And I get people to come. So like
Yeah.
I start building up and finding. So like I'll be stalking your LinkedIn profile. So if you see me pop up, I'm about to invite you to an event.
Are the events, with the big events like a Dreamforce, you as the person who's going has to pony up. Right? Your company will pay for you to go to these sort of events. Is that the same case here? Is that also how you make some of that? It sounds like there's a couple ways you sort of make that money back. Is that one way, or do you rely on sponsors? How do you sort of offset some of those costs?
Sponsorship. That's what we've been doing more and more of, getting sponsors in there to co-sponsor with us, right, to offset some of the cost. But we also realize that events are 1, 2, or 3 touches in that 9 to 11 to converting somebody. So we have actually seen a couple $1 million of revenue where event marketing in the last few years has been at least 1 or 2 touches, right? Because
Wow, that's quick.
at these events, so like if my total event expense is about 360,000, I have maybe probably 5x that, maybe actually probably more. I think it's been maybe 6x that investment. And I'm not including salaries or anything, right? But just, just the
Sure.
cost of the event in general. So it's a 6x return for us. So we have our team here. So like we'll have a solution architect, the CEO, right? Our VP of client, our VP of digital transformation. They're the ones meeting with people, like the head of revenue when we were fully staffed. And those are the people meeting with the attendees and talking and making that connection, and then having that lunch, right? Maybe 2 weeks from now, right? And that's what we're doing. But we're also working on. We started doing our first sponsorships. I think it was last December was one of our first sponsorships where it helped offset cost. So I mean, I'm a believer in sponsorships because I mean, you can, if you find the right people, you have the right packages to incentivize, you can offset cost up to 30. I mean, I've heard of one event that happened in Austin, I think about 6 weeks ago, was fully paid for by sponsors. And it was a
That's
huge
amazing.
conference. So,
That's
like,
amazing.
so it can be done. For me, I'm happy if I can just offset cost by 30%.
What are some of the packages you put together for sponsors? Like, how do you make that, how do you bring them in a way that makes it valuable to them?
So what I like to do with sponsors is I give them a chunk of the invite list, right? So I'm like, listen, this is for you to influence people within your sphere and bring them in. It depends on the kind of event. So if it's like a networking event, it's signage, it's support, it's promotion, cross promotion. For us as an agency, we also allow for, we have a podcast for the CEO called The Spark of Ages. The logo's right behind me, but it's like, we also offer that too as like a kind of a placement, right? An opportunity to have a platform like this to share and to talk about, and something that you can market yourself or your brand or your company. So like that's kind of what we do. I did one event on my own with an event partner, but for a live podcast in San Francisco, and we got those sponsors up there, right, where they were able to commit dollars to it, getting their logos up there. They were able to go to the after party, which was a boat cruise around San Francisco at night. So, there were like things like that. So it depends on your event, depends on what media channels and what things you have to offer. Like I went to an event that had somebody, really pay for the food, but they had their logo was everywhere, right? Like I wasn't sure even what Inflection AI did, but their logo was everywhere. They had tables in the room, like networking with people. So it just depends on what you're looking to do.
So there's two ways to come about this that I feel like is really helpful. One is as the person who's throwing the event and the costs associated with that. What's the um and the other side is the sponsorships, or you could be the person sponsoring an event. Let's talk about the return for folks on this because this sounds all lovely and glorious. And then they're going to go throw an event and it's going to be the highlight of the season. And then leadership is going to turn around and go, great, where's our revenue? How many customers? So I feel like it sounds like there's a couple ways to make revenue from this in terms of the sponsorships and getting people, you said there's like a 6x ROI in some regard if you can do it that way. For the people who are looking at this as more of a networking, maybe it's more lower in terms of the walking event than the bringing people in to have conversation and more of that aspect. That's going to be more of an ROI return in regards to what customers they get from that, correct? Right?
Yeah.
Like that's sort of so what kind of return can they expect? Is that, I mean, I know that it depends scope. It's going to depend on their email and their nurture and how they follow up and all of the things. But I
Yes.
mean, as an initial contact point, or maybe a third or fourth contact point, depending on what your marketing was leading up into it, why this over advertising? I'm just being willy-nilly about it, but like, why put money into this? What's the return on it?
Yeah, so I think like for the first GTM event we did, we partnered with SalesHub, right? So they're a revenue platform. So, after that event, I had the leadership team like, holy crap, that was amazing. Like the points of contact that they had. So for them, it was actually identifying leads that were maybe unknown to them. So like people that we brought in, we had a big chunk of the list that did that, but they actually had actionable stuff, right? And like you said, the devil's in the details. So it's always about your follow up and how good your conversations are. Like for us, it was I think a total of 5 or 6 clients got signed through a series of events, right? So
Okay,
so for us, these events, it's not just a one and done, right? And where it's like magic. You're like, hey, I put down 8,000. Like
such a good point.
let the money come in. You have to work everything consistently. Like I'm telling you, the first day of work after an event weekend, we are going through the contact list. We're looking at, okay, we're going to have lunch with this person. We're going to talk to this person. We're going to send a case study over to this person. We're going through that list and identifying the targets, right, for us to reach out, to follow up. And that's how the revenue came in. In terms of like for sponsorships, when you're a smaller brand, right, you can actually get some visibility. So for us with the Growth Marketing Summit this year, we want to bring in sponsors. So what that means is podcast episode, right? That also means speaking engagement, right? That within the theme that we have for that. So if we go with agentic AI, speak within the theme and show that value to the people, because this community that we build, like that WhatsApp group from this year is still active right now after 11 months
Oh,
of
cool.
people. The people who came have invited other attendees to sit on the board of their companies. Like there is this back and forth flow of just good things happening for the group that's there, right? And it's kept a WhatsApp group alive for 11 months of like
Oh,
people who have
wow.
known each other before this event. So doing things, and I love what the CEO says, which is we don't ask first, right? We like, what can we do for you? And how we can
Yes.
connect you, how can we do this? And then that will be returned to us. So having that active community and then bringing back and tapping into them, because one of the people that attended, one of my favorite people, and I've been to about 4 or 5 of his events, but David Dukovich, he actually, so he and I talked at his last summit, and it was an AI summit in San Francisco. And I asked him, I said, listen, we're doing the Growth Marketing Summit again, but I'm going to need some help finding the right sponsors. So he's willing to help me. So using these events, I'm building connections. Like I find all kinds of unique venues. I find good caterers. I also find people that I can connect with to help me identify sponsors or even invite the right people. So like that's the kind of thing. So when you're looking at it from revenue, like I feel like that immediate gain, like you're looking and saying like, well, where is the money? We just spent this. That's not how this works, right? It's a long, it's a long road to building that value, building that community, and that stuff will be returned to you. And I feel like when you,
Yes to that.
I mean, if you just look at it like, where's my stuff right now? That might not happen. Like my stuff was one touch on that way to a couple million in revenue. So like I did my thing. We did our follow-ups, right? And a client might have popped up here. I also do events that are hero moments for people, right? So doing panels where I can have people speak, giving them the visibility and audience, right, to influence, like creating. So, before I joined Publicis, I was one of their clients with Epsilon before it joined Publicis or was acquired by Publicis. So as a JP Morgan VP and having managing Epsilon, they used to create hero moments for me. So I was the only Chase person who ever went to their summit in Florida. So they consistently uplifted me. So that's what I also brought to my practice. So for some of these things, I want to uplift the right people, give them that platform, give them the voice, right? And help build that brand. And then once again, it kind of like pays off as it rolls forward,
It's
right?
true. It's the circle of influence motion. So I think there's lots of different ways to create to be a circle of influence. Um, and I never thought of serial events as such a beautiful way to do that and to build community and then to feed each other in a really wonderful, positive way that then it circles back on you. You know, the pay it forward motion is real.
Yeah.
And when you're a service business like we are, the best way to build is to first help and then figure out who else you can help. One of my favorite things to do in terms of circle of influence is finding people who um, that I get to give work to. It's my favorite. If I get to bring a piece of work to somebody, like, and and it's a good piece of work that they can really like enjoy and sink their teeth into and like have a wonderful experience, and that is like such a joy for me, and I'm happy to do that all day, right, for folks. And I wasn't even expecting it to come back. It's just something I really love to do. And it has. Like it's I'm like this client will show up. I'd be like, "Oh, how'd you hear about this?" Like, "Oh, from this person." And I'd be like, I'll ask them like they're like, "Yeah, we're so grateful for you like helping me find work." I was like, I didn't even think that that was a thing. Right? So finding those moments that really give you joy of how you can pay it forward, you never know the trying to figure out the ROI and everything. I got to ask the questions because I know marketers are listening and I know, I know their leadership's going to turn around and ask them the questions, right? So I got to ask. But I do know in my heart of hearts of like, it's not really what it's about. The ROI will come. But what it's about is building those connections, building those relationships, being that circle of influence and helping others. And
It's really community building, right? Like you're
yeah,
building a sustainable community, right? That you can
and doing it.
just all things come through and from that. So like now, I mean, you know how you and I got connected, right?
Yes.
I was at
Lovely Trevor Van Warden. Shout out to Trevor.
I talked to Trevor at a pavilion dinner, right? Because I also
Oh,
attend events. So I met him and I had connected with him. I didn't realize it, but I connected with him months before because I wanted to connect with pavilion members on LinkedIn. So I was talking to him and he had a little pitch there at dinner. And he's like, I know, I need to connect you with. And I'm like, awesome. But
do
that's the
it.
thing, right? Like, that's
Yes.
how like networking and events work, right? Like I've got a friend of mine who, as I'm building also a fractional practice, I met him at an event in June and we become friends. We've attended a couple of events and we're working. Like I went up on Monday afternoon and him and I were helping each other on building the decks for our fractional practice. And just like, but and then that community and WhatsApp, somebody was like, I need a PMM stat. Somebody in cybersec who can work fractionally. So I pick up the horn and say, I'm like, Chris, any PMMs that are available and work fractionally, right? Just connecting people and serving
Yes.
the community. I mean, so yeah, if you want that quick ROI, it might not happen with everything. But if you want that deeper relationship that you're willing to nurture and to grow and to help put together,
Yes.
then I think that pays off in the long run significantly.
There's a couple things that we touched on that I just want to like come back to make sure people really hear us and love these lovely stories you've told, Taryn. One is that it's not just about having one event, it's how you layer them on and build them. The other thing I heard you say in terms of who you invite to these events, it sounds like a wonderful mix of people, um, not just leaning into net new clients, but bringing along existing clients, and and then you got sponsors and partners in there. Did I pick up on that correctly?
Yes, that's the
Yeah,
mix. Yeah.
you gotta have a mix. You gotta
Right.
have a mix. I love that. I think that's so key. And then the ultimate goal being about connection and networking,
Yeah.
I think is just really key. What I loved about this and all of your examples is that there were so many the diversity was really wonderful. And to think about it not as like you have to make this big splash all the time. You have to make memorable moments every time, but how big that splash needs to be, it doesn't need to be so big. It can
Yeah.
be moments. It's about the moments.
You're absolutely right. It's like you got here, like, so when my CEO is like, I want to do the walking group at my house, like we need to think about what we're going to do. I'm like, okay. And he's like, and don't go overboard, don't go nuts. Like, he's like lecturing me. I'm like, when do I ever do that? I'm like, I'm creating a bespoke experience, right? Because I don't think it's nuts to do things. Like, I feel like I want to do something, and just like at that last event, I did the tequila tasting. Somebody was like, how do you know this? And because I'm like leading them through this tequila tasting of a tequila I've never had. And I was like, I go and find somebody who specializes it in, total wine and more. And I talk to them. I look at the bottles. I tell them what I'm looking for. I go to the site. I research notes. I said, if you just think my events happen through happenstance, then you would be wrong, right? There's preparation, there's education,
So much.
and studying, and there's so much that goes into it. It's like the event is only I don't know, it could be like, sometimes for me, it's a weekend. Right? So the event's on a weekend, but there is 3 weeks of just hardcore focus on everything and pulling it together.
That's my last question for you. I could talk to you all day, Taryn. But this does feel big. It feels big and like a lot. And I love that you mentioned it, the devil's in the details of it, and those memorable moments come from just that one thing, whether it was the FOMO of the bourbon tasting or the having being able to sit down and have a massage for 5 seconds. So how do you not eat the elephant? How do you not get overwhelmed? Like, where do you start? And what are some of the high level, like, give us a little bit of a framework here for us to start working within.
Well, I mean, it really starts with what I'm trying to accomplish, right? So, like, if I identify the level of the event, so for me, let's say it's either the GTM networking, it's the dinners, or like, the walking group thing, or we're doing an AI and marketing session, right? So like maybe speaking and education. So finding that event, and then defining the audience, and then you work down from there, right? So like for me, if I did the AI and marketing session, I need a facility in the area that people can easily commute to, right? Because in the Bay Area, the traffic is insane. So like even getting somebody from like, the peninsula, which Palo Alto and stuff, down to Santa Clara is impossible, right? So
Yeah.
Going to Palo Alto, I was able to rent an event space that was an old theater, right? So like, but it starts with what kind of event, what kind of venue do I need, and who are the people that are coming and where are they? And then I go from there. I find that spot in Palo Alto. I connect with the right caterers, right? And then pull that all together, get the speakers locked down. Invite that class of people that I want to hit from in the new community and the existing community. And then it all comes together. But I start with the basics, right? What are you trying to accomplish? What's your audience? Where are your audience, right? Because like in Park City, everybody's got to fly in. And sometimes East Coast, West Coast, right? I think this one that we're planning, we might have 2 people from the UK, right, coming. So it's like, logistically, there's a lot to handle. So, but start with your basics of what you want to accomplish. What are you setting out to do? What is the core of it? What's that experience you're building? And then who's coming and where are they, right? And just go from there, and then everything else clicks into it.
It sounds like you never go at this alone.
Sometimes.
You definitely have the vision. When you don't go at it alone, who are sort of your go-to? Is it like the partners you use over and over again? Do you find new partners every time? And then who within your team do you like, buddy up with to say, is it an executive? Is it an assistant? Is it office manager? Is it other teams within, if you're doing this from a marketing perspective, do you bring sales into it? Do you bring product into it? Like, who are you?
Yeah.
How do you rally?
How do I make it happen? So basically, depending on the size of the event. So I have a marketing specialist and a marketing ops, sales ops specialist, right? So they're like my core team. So we're working together logistically, planning this out, like who's coming when, okay, when are the cleaners coming for the space, and just planning this all out. So that's the core team. Our EA, so she's been with me for 2 years and been on almost every one of our events. she's done the walking groups with me, and then she's like, her and I working together, and I'm setting an example and showing her like, this is what we got to do, this is what you got to handle. I was able to travel during 2 or 3 walking groups and have her manage and set up this event perfectly, right? So like helping her, and she would do it also with the team, but getting her in the right mindset. So I'm trying to get her to become that event marketing specialist, right? Because I want her to expand her capability, because she's very capable and has just like that never-ending drive. So I'm like, let's get you involved and get you in here and activate. On the leadership side, it's usually like the VP of digital transformation, the CEO, the VP of ops, the VP of client, and the head of revenue, pulling them together and planning some stuff, talking about the logistics, talking about the invites, working with them and driving them. And sometimes like herding cats, let's be honest, driving them to pick a theme for the growth marketing summit, right? I think agentic AI is something we should be talking about, because it's coming very robustly, very quickly, and it'll be here before you know. Well, it's here now, but I mean, in 5 years from now, I don't think we will recognize where, kind of where we thought we would be with this.
It'll just be in everything. It'll just be part of everything.
I mean, I saw one guy say that there could be an agent talking to another agent, then they both realize they need a human, and then they go to another agent to hire a human to fulfill something. So like, that's the future. I think we should talk about that as the theme. But I got to get the leadership team around that, right? And then we got to find the speakers. Then we got to find the sponsors, right? Who maybe aren't competing with us. They do something that maybe might be similar, but they add value, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of how we do it. But that's the team.
Yeah. My executive assistant is my saving everything. When we do our annual summit every year, it is all about Queen Kathy, because she pulls it at like a rabbit out of a hat every time. And I had her on site with me for the first time last year, and I will never go back to not having her on site. It was a game changer, just from like getting everybody in the room on time and promising them that I would order them coffee if they did it. Like, if you get in the room, Kathy will order you coffee and we'll have it delivered. It'll be glorious, right? Like,
yeah.
And then when things would go sideways, like to have her there knowing all the logistics of how executive assistants are just unsung heroes of event planning, well, of everything, but especially event planning.
So that growth marketing summit this year, her and I were like, so we split a room. So we're like in there, we're planning gift bags, we're loading up gift bags, we're over here, we're shopping, right? Because we want to get the materials for the concierge to cook for people. And we're just like, we're all together. Her and I spent 7 days together for 80 hours and just put this whole thing together. And like on the flight, like, it was her and I were the last 2 to leave, of course. First there, last out.
Last to leave. Yeah.
So it was her birthday weekend. So I was like, I'm like, let's go get patties. So good. Just went in the airport and just went to the flight and just did it. I was like, yeah, thanks for everything.
That is, that's so good. I am so grateful for this conversation, Taryn. You have definitely sparked so many ideas for me, and I'm sure for so many others, of how we can bring event planning into our marketing strategy, not as a one-off. That was my big aha moment with this, and I am grateful for it. So thank you so much. Before we go,
Yeah.
2 things. One is there any last piece of advice for people who are now, you've sparked interest and they're thinking about how to get going in 2025? Any last words of wisdom in embracing events and leaning into it?
Just figure out what you're trying to accomplish, right? And know that, it doesn't have to be grandiose, right? It can be small things or targeted, but just figure out what you're trying to accomplish. Like, if your thing is about brand activation, like, how are you going to do it, right? And just go really high level, look at what you're trying to accomplish and what you want to do, and just focus that on there.
I love that.
Just focus down, because it can be overwhelming, right? If you've got this calendar, this 30 events. I mean, like, for me, last year was insane, and it was like just a ton of stuff, and it can be overwhelming. So just start small. Start with 1 or 2.
Yeah. 1 at a time. Where can people find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn, Taryn Talley 1, and Instagram, Taryn Talley 1, and Blue Sky, Taryn Talley.
Look at you getting the, not needing the one on Blue Sky. Look at you go. That is,
Yeah,
everybody's headed there. I'm headed there myself. I'm excited for it.
I'm loving it.
Uh,
But yeah.
oh, okay. Well, we could do a whole show on that. Before we go, Taryn, because you are more than a marketer. You're more than a marketer. You live in the Bay Area, a near and dear place to me. What are you most looking forward to as you're closing out 2025 here? Anything personally going on that's like exciting and you're like
Not
excited
really.
for?
I'm just, for me, just wrapping up strong, right? Like I
Yeah.
start the year with a huge strategy and plan, and December is all about me just looking at the tactics and seeing what we have accomplished and being able to report back on that and start planning. Right now, I need to be planning for next year. So like for me, it's like that December is just kind of like focused in the data, right? I am
Yeah.
in spreadsheets the month of December. So like that's my jam. And just
Love a
figuring
good
stuff
spreadsheet.
out. Yeah. And then just trying to like enjoy some time and, just kick back once in a while.
Decompress. Get
The-
gear up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then rearm, resupply, and get back in it.
Rearm, resupply, and get back in it. I'm gonna make that a mantra. Yeah, that's amazing. Taryn, I'm so grateful for this conversation. Thank you to Toki. She has a question for us. We're going to circle back with you, Toki. We have not forgotten you and your question, and we'll get that answered asynchronously. Thank you to all of our listeners. If you like this episode, please like, subscribe, and share. This episode was brought to you by MKG Marketing, the digital marketing agency that helps complex brands get found via SEO and digital ads. This podcast is hosted by me, Carrie Gard, CEO and co-founder of MKG Marketing. And if you want to be a guest, DM me. I'd love to have you on. I'd love to have a conversation just like this one. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Tara.
Absolutely. Bye.